see me? Am I in the frame? Help me, Spring.
Almost.
Should I gesture?
You look like a headless prophet.
Yeah, that's fine. Maybe some Halloween vibes.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
There we go.
Is that good? Is that good? All right. This one's part 15 of our Exodus series. It's called Tabernacle. Emptiness is the womb of creation. This is Isaiah 30. Thus says the Lord, the Holy One of Israel. The salvation you seek is found only in rest. Come home again to freedom, to the quiet confidence of your true strength. So, Israel figured, like most of us have, that salvation would continue to arrive on faster horses and military might, or by praying the right prayers, or offering costly sacrifices. There's a part of this that turns everything into effort, even grace. I'm just fascinated about the 300-year period between the death and resurrection of Christ and then the establishment of the church, when there were no scriptures, no orthodoxy, no agreed upon standards of what this thing even is. There were just thousands and thousands of people being baptized and born again into life. All these different communities, all these different ideas. And I read this book one time called Beyond Belief, and it talked about the early Christian belief wars and how John's gospel, the gospels that we have are like little camps. These little individual groups of, small groups of, they probably didn't call themselves Christians then, whatever they were, gathering around whatever scrap of text that they had, trying to sort out whatever it was that was happening inside of them. And they all had different flavors, and this one disappeared for until right after World War II. You know, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi, all these scriptures that had been destroyed in the name of congruence. Some monks somewhere in Egypt stashed a bunch in some clay pots. They got covered in sand. Some shepherd in 1952 ran into them. And all of a sudden comes all of this Christian literature from that era that was just gone. And the Gospel of Thomas is a famous one. And Thomas's gospel is all about experience, direct experience of the presence. And apparently the folks in the Gospel of John camp and the Gospel of Thomas camp didn't agree because their stated means of experiencing salvation were very different. John's gospel is famously all about belief, and Thomas's is all about experience. And that's why, you guys know Doubting Thomas?
That's where that comes from?
He's only in John's gospel. Thomas is the only clown in John's gospel.
Oh, man.
Isn't that interesting? Uh-huh. Yeah. Anyway, I say all that to say, the emphasis on belief that we've inherited in today's, form of Christianity, if you grew up in the church, it emphasizes belief. And it kind of, somewhere along the way, I was actually walking into the pink room, the old, storage closet at the theaters one day. And I was at, peak deconstruction, I felt like that most of the time. And I would tell my spiritual director, I'm a pastor, but I'm not sure if I'm a Christian anymore, and I think this might be dangerous. I kind of need, I wish I had a cave or something I could go to and find some spiritual master to help me sort this out. And she let me say that a few times, and she was like, is that a possible course of action for you in your life right now? And I was like, no. And she's like, maybe just trust the process. But I was walking into the utility closet and thinking about belief and realizing, I was like, gosh, for me anyway, it's easier to wrangle my behavior into some semblance of control than it is to get my beliefs, on the same page as everybody else. And and then I thought about how the word make believe, if you're made to believe something, it's make believe. And then I started like really listening to people and realizing that even in like the closed Christian circuits where we all believe the same thing, it isn't actually true. There's like as many religions as there are humans, if you really listen. But there's some part of us that like just is freaked out by grace. And rather than just like resting and receiving, we feel like there's got to be something I have to do. Jesus says on the cross, it's finished. And we go, it's pretty close.
Is it?
I'll take it from here. When the prophets come through with lines like this one from Isaiah, asking us to slow down and to drop our guard and to keep Sabbath and to trust that it's all right. Rest reveals that salvation isn't only something in the future, that salvation is a quality of the present moment. And most of us have lived long enough now to realize that like a quiet confidence is an expression of true strength. And all the noise and bluster and declarations and plans and certainty, it's just a bunch of noise. Back when I first started like spying on myself, trying to figure out where it was that I was speaking from, I remember it was in this deconstruction period and I was talking to somebody in the lobby and I was trying to express one of these ideas that felt far out and illegal to me at the time, to him. But I was trying to tell this guy something that he needed to know, like he had to know it. And I was like, bro, listen. And I'm like, and I think the content was mostly true, probably, but the place it was coming from was just like, like something in me was like trying to like shake him by the shoulders or something. But out here I'm all, mellow. But that restraint, that quiet confidence of just seeing that we don't really need to change. Well, we don't need to change anything. Everything's changing already. There's a process that's unfolding. There's an internal logic to this whole reality that we can't understand or participate with as long as we're just trying to manage and control. And that's why scriptures emphasize rest as much as they do. Page 2, it's one of my favorite expressions I've ever heard, tohu wabohu. It comes from Genesis 1:2. It's really famous. It says, in the beginning, the earth was formless and void, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. Formless and void is tohu wabohu. If you direct translate it from the Hebrew, it means chaotic, undifferentiated depth. The Spirit of God hovers in silence over the chaotic waters of infinite potential. And as is so often true, what's observable in the natural world is just a mirror to our inner condition. This is Martin Laird. It says, most people don't stick with a contemplative discipline for very long. We've heard all sorts of talk about contemplation delivering inner peace, but when we turn within to seek this peace, instead we meet chaos. The peace will indeed come, but it won't be the fruit of pushing away distractions, but of feeding thoughts and feelings with stillness instead of commentary. It's a skill that we must learn. St. Peter wrote that we're all welcome to participate in the divine nature, which is pretty far out. And the doorway into that participation is the recognition that the posture of the divine is one of rest. Even when there's movement and motion, it's coming from a place of rest. And you guys know what it feels like when you're working from that place. Like, few things in my life have been as refining as trying to raise kids, because they keep acting like you. And one thing that I observed for long enough that it started to actually change in my observation was I used to do a lot of parenting from a place of panic, like, dear God, if we don't nip this in the bud. And so that you can say something true, but you say it from that place, and then it's received with energy because it's how these things work. The same words can come from a calm, centered place of quiet confidence, and it seems to be no less effective, except for that it just feels better for everybody. Rest is the posture of the divine, and restfulness is the prerequisite for divine action. Right at the beginning, this is page 3, Genesis 1, Hebrew scripture presents these two currents of divine presence. There's great words, ruach, which is the creative breath. It's the same word in Hebrew. It means breath, wind, and spirit. It also, interestingly, means like bluster or anger. It's like a heavy wind. And it's the word that's used most primarily about God in action, creating. And then there's this other one, Shekinah, which means to dwell or to rest or to abide. Without Ruach, life stagnates, but without Shekinah, we just go crazy. Here's the thing. It's this is like reality's open secret, I feel like. Whatever it is that we're working on, it's never actually done. Which also means it's kind of always done, depending on how you want to look at it. I remember my dad a while ago, I built something in my backyard. I was like, hey, Dad, come check this out. Get back there. And he was like, oh man, Bob, this looks great. And I'm like, yeah, but I didn't quite caulk the corner the way I wanted to. And there's this little gap in the floorboard. He laughed. He was like, this is what always happens. Like, he's like, I do this every time too. I invite somebody over. And it's just, to us, it never feels finished. Everybody else looks great, for the most part. Creation begins with motion, but it's completed in stillness. Next page. On the 7th day, God rested. To rest is the art of learning to see the enoughness present in every moment. Creation isn't whole and complete until it's enjoyed rather than endlessly managed. God said to Moses, make for me a sanctuary that I may dwell among you. But before Moses delivers the plans for the tabernacle, he reiterates the centrality of rest, and that's the Sabbath. The tabernacle eventually is built, and it has these three chambers. There's an outer court, a holy place, and the Holy of Holies. It was an actual tent that was built at some point, but it's a map. It's the architecture of the soul. It's an architecture of divine rest. We begin in the outer court, which is life in the body. This is the concrete, the ordinary, the realm of body and senses, our everyday, walking around life. This is where we learn to offer what's unconscious or reactive. Our fears, our appetites, our impulses, as a sacrifice on the altar of awareness. For a little while, this phrase came to mind. And I would match it with my breath. And if that wasn't working, I would get up and move, and I would match it with my steps. And it was just a little circle. It just said, I am right here, I am. I am right here, I am. I am right here, I am. So having some kind of go-to, some practice, just like touching your heart, something that helps when you can feel the tension and the chaos, and you can feel the busyness is pushing in, or that we're fused to it in some way, some way to step back from it, to remind ourselves that we're right here, right now, in our body, that our body is a temple of the divine presence, and that we can't experience what it is to be carried until we are willing to let go. Brother Lawrence, the patron saint of doing the dishes. You ever hear that guy? He wrote this. I turn my little omelet in the pan. Turn my little omelet in the pan for the love of God. And when it's finished, I have nothing to do. So I lay down on the ground and I adore my God who gave me the grace to make the omelet. After this I arise, more content than a king. The holy place, the second chamber, is life from the heart. This is the realm of heart, mind, memory, imagination, feeling, thought. The outer court is activity. The inner court is attention and prayer. where we learn to reorient our thoughts and our emotions around presence rather than anxiety. Metanoia, repent, means go beyond the mind, which means get out of the patterns for a little while. It has an equal and opposite phrase that somehow came into the English lexicon unscathed from the original Greek. You know what it is? Metanoia and
Paranoia.
paranoia. Meta means beyond, noia means mind. Noia means mind, para means with. Paranoia actually means being with your mind.
That makes sense.
The holy place quietly insists that we pay attention. It's one of my favorite writers, Frederick Buechner. He said, listen to your life. See it for the fathomless mystery that it is, and the boredom and the pain of it no less than the excitement and the gladness. Touch, taste, smell your way to the holy and hidden heart of it. Because in the last analysis, all moments are key moments, and life itself is grace. And at the center of the holy place is the Holy of Holies, place of pure stillness. Do you guys know this story? It's kind of a famous story that the way the Holy of Holies worked is that there was a high priest, and once a year, Yom Kippur, the high priest went into the Holy of Holies to do penance. And as the story goes, when he went into the Holy of Holies, he'd wear little bells on his robe, and they'd tie a rope around his ankle in case he was struck dead in the presence of God. So that is, so yeah, you couldn't go in after him. So if you hear the bells stop, and the secretary would pull him out and they'd get a new high priest. And that's not in the Bible. There's no rope. There's no pulling out the dead priest. That probably came along somewhere in medieval Christianity when we came up with a lot of ideas. Hell, all these ideas about hell, it's just like Dante's Inferno. It's his paintings that he made, and then they became orthodox. But along with this idea. Anyway, I think that the story's sticky because it presents something that's archetypal, which is that the ego projects fear onto silence and stillness. I don't know if we're afraid to go into the Holy of Holies because we might find out there's nothing there. For years and years, I was part of these small groups, and we'd always be like, we should begin with prayer. And then we'd be like, well, we'll do prayer at the end. Let's do the talking about the chapter from the book first. And then everybody would talk, and then it'd be 20 minutes later and then you don't pray. And then that dude would notice that I was doing the same thing at home. I'd get up in the morning. I'd listen to my podcast on silence. I'd read 3 books by the mystics saying how important it is to sit quietly. And I'd try to sit quietly, and I would turn inside, and I would find just the weirdest things. Just the weirdest things were happening in here, man. Oh my gosh. And I would be like, never mind, I'm just going to read another book about this. For a long time. And then things would start to settle down, and I would realize that nothing feels as sacred as sitting silently, that silence has a presence, I can feel it with us sometimes when we sit in silence. It's like you can feel presence arrive, or our awareness of presence cue in. But for a long time, even with some of those experiences, in my mind, I could picture myself sitting just outside the Holy of Holies, like this little avatar body, debating whether he was going to go in and cross this threshold, and feeling both compelled and terrified. Thought of it. The silent center, absolute stillness that is open to all. Where there's no sound and no image and no movement, there's also no separateness. To the ego, silence can feel like death because in the presence of the absolute, all self-assertion ceases. This is Meister Eckhart's page 7. He said, nothing in all creation is so like God as stillness. Saint Isaac of Nineveh, from silence is born something that leads us into silence itself. Paradox of this whole thing is that the silence that seems to threaten the self is the place that births the self anew. And so when we're afraid of stillness, we're afraid of our own birth. I don't think anybody has quotes attributed to them that I can tell just from first reading there's no way they said it than Albert Einstein. So I have no idea if he actually said this. I've come to be very skeptical of Einstein quotes, but I liked it anyway. Creativity is a residue of wasted time. When Dave asked me which songs for this morning, I was like, anything you want, man. Just not that one with the bridge that goes, you never stop working. You ever hear that one? That's a great tune, man. Waymaker, miracle worker. It gets this bridge. It says, I think written from a beautiful place that like God is always working on our behalf. But here we were, for a while I was observing a couple hundred of us singing, you never stop working, and thinking, okay, this is a very American value to project onto ultimate reality, You never take a break. You just keep grinding even when you're tired, you're grouchy. It's probably why you're so angry all the time. You never stop working. And yeah, exactly. Oh, the divine never stops dwelling. The presence never stops abiding. That work flows out of rest and it returns to rest again, just like us, dust to dust. So every breath that we breathe consciously is a miniature Sabbath. We can do what the Hebrews did, which was take 616 laws and stretch them into like 28,000 laws and say, you can guide your oxen on the Sabbath day, but if he falls into a ditch, you can repair 3 of his legs, but not his 4th. That's kind of like the stuff that we do. Jesus says, love your neighbor. And somebody goes, who is my neighbor? We just like, let me see how much I can complicate that so that I don't have to do anything about it except for think. So we can get hung up on the Sabbath in that way too, God, I made it halfway through Saturday without doing anything, and then here I am cutting the grass, and it's not what we're talking about. Every breath that's breathed consciously is a miniature Sabbath. Every stillness that we embrace is silent tabernacle. Every time we notice, we feel like we've wandered far from home. The place we're noticing from is home. What we're looking for is where we're looking from. It's from Hebrews 4, I paraphrase it. And it's page 8. A deep rest still waits for the human heart. And it's the rest that God dwells in eternally. The world can spin on its own for a while as we relax into the quiet delight of completed work. So, what are we to do with our ambition? Harness it and allow it to guide us into rest with all the energy that we once spent avoiding it. Otherwise, we'll just keep circling outside the very peace that's already ours. Yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank y'all for being here.